The Desperate Call. The grand observation deck of the Celestial Harmony, flagship of the Lumina Alliance, was silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. High Admiral Felix Vorn stood with his 4 arms clasped behind his back, his luminescent skin dimmed with exhaustion as he stared at the holographic display. Once, this map had shown the proud expanse of the Lumina Alliance. 37 spacefaring species united across 12,000 star systems. Now, barely 100 systems remained, scattered islands in a growing sea of darkness. Another colony lost, reported Science Director Ilara Nice, her crystalline form catching the starlight as she approached. Her normally melodic voice was flat with fatigue. The Void Eaters consumed Proxima Centauri Station in under 6 hours. 17 billion souls gone. Felix closed his inner eyelids in a moment of grief. How long until they reached the Lumina core worlds? At current consumption rates, 19 standard cycles. Perhaps 21 if our new defensive grid performs better than simulations suggest. Ilara's data crystal pulsed with calculations too grim to voice. The Void Eaters had appeared 18 months ago from the Galactic Rim, a cosmic horror unlike anything recorded in the Alliance's 20,000 years of astronomy. Not a species, not a civilization, but something more fundamental and terrifying. They consumed energy at its most basic level, devouring stars, planets, and all matter in between, converting everything into more of themselves. The more they consumed, the faster they spread. The Alliance's most advanced weapons merely accelerated the consumption process. Antimatter bombs, quantum disruptors, even experimental reality warping technologies, all had failed catastrophically. "The High Council is gathering," said Commander Zix, his insectoid mandibles clicking with stress. "They're calling it the Final Conclave." Felix nodded grimly. As they should. The Lumina High Council chamber, once a marvel of artistic engineering that showcased the Alliance's cultural pinnacle, now served as the emergency operations center for what remained of galactic civilization. Representatives of 23 species, all that remained of the original 37, gathered in a somber semicircle. Many attended via hologram, their actual bodies defending distant outposts in desperate last stands. High Counselor Oma Lux, the eldest of the Futurians, floated at the center, her gaseous body glowing with diminished light. "Admiral Vorn, your assessment, please." Unfiltered. Felix straightened his uniform, a gesture more from habit than protocol. "We have exhausted all conventional and theoretical defensive options. Our predictive models give us 3 weeks at most before complete extinction." A collective shudder passed through the assembly. "Then we have no choice," said Counselor Lux, her light dimming further. "Archivist 10, present your findings." An ancient Nemorian shuffled forward, his wrinkled skin covered in living tattoos that stored data, the biological archives of a species dedicated to remembering. "My fellow counselors, in our most restricted archives, sealed away since the Great Schism, I have discovered references to another option." The chamber hushed. There exists, or existed, another spacefaring species known as humans. He projected images from his skin archives showing bizarre bipedal beings with unusual symmetrical features and no apparent natural defenses. According to records dating back 12,000 years, humans were problematic. "Problematic how?" demanded General Kraz of the warrior Vexeri. "They were unpredictable, dangerously innovative, evolutionarily impossible. Their planet should never have produced a dominant sentient species given its chaotic development path." Archivist 10's tattoos swirled with ancient warnings. "They developed technologies in the wrong order, created art that caused physiological responses in other species, and approached warfare with disturbing creativity." "Were they violent?" asked Science Director Ilara. "Not exceptionally, by galactic standards," 10 replied. "But they were perhaps the only species who viewed violence as a creative endeavor rather than a necessary evil." Counselor Lux's light pulsed with concern. "Why were they sealed from our records?" After a series of incidents collectively called the severance, it was mutually agreed the humans would isolate themselves beyond the outer spiral arm. In exchange, knowledge of their existence and location would be restricted to prevent complications. Admiral Felix frowned. You're suggesting we contact a potentially hostile species that has been deliberately isolated for 12 millennia, because they might help us. I am suggesting, Ten replied carefully, that if any species might view the impossible challenge of the Void Eaters differently, it would be humans. After 3 days of desperate debate, with 2 more systems lost to the Void Eaters, the High Council voted. The decision wasn't unanimous, but with extinction looming, even the staunchest opponents conceded they had nothing to lose. Using coordinates extracted from the ancient archives and communication protocols that had to be reconstructed from fragmented data, the Lumen Alliance sent a desperate message into the unknown reaches of space. To the species known as humans, the galactic community faces extinction. An entity we call the Void Eaters consumes all matter and energy. Our civilization falls. If you exist, if you remember us, we request any assistance. We are prepared to offer anything in exchange. For 5 agonizing days, there was no response. 2 more systems fell. Evacuation ships crowded the remaining habitable planets. Military vessels prepared for suicide missions that might buy civilians a few more hours. Then, on the 6th day, every communication system across the Alliance simultaneously activated. Screens flickered to life, showing only static, but a voice, clear, calm, and unsettlingly confident, spoke in perfect modern galactic standard. Transmission received. This is Commander Alexandra Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. Describe these Void Eaters in detail. We're interested. The command center of the celestial harmony erupted in shocked excitement. Admiral Felix quickly established a direct link and spent the next 2 hours transmitting everything they knew about the Void Eaters. Composition analysis, consumption patterns, failed defense strategies, and estimated time until total extinction. When he finished, there was a long pause before the human responded. Our analysis team has reviewed your data. Interesting problem. We'll assist under 3 conditions. First, complete access to all your scientific and historical databases. Second, autonomous operational authority. Our ships, our rules. Third, recognition of human territorial claims to be determined after resolution. The terms were steep, but the alternative was oblivion. The High Council approved within the hour. How quickly can you deploy? Felix asked, expecting a response measured in weeks. Enough time only to witness the end together. Advanced scout vessels will arrive at coordinates you designate in 17 hours. Main battle group in 36. Prepare your people. Some may find our methods unsettling. The transmission ended, leaving the Alliance leadership in stunned silence. 17 hours. General Kraz sputtered. Impossible. Even with our most advanced drive systems, the coordinates they'd be coming from would require at least 6 days' travel. Science Director Ilara's crystals pulsed with calculations. Unless they've developed transportation technology beyond our understanding. Or they've been closer than we thought all along, muttered Counselor Lux. Exactly 16 hours and 42 minutes later, long-range sensors detected unusual energy signatures at the designated coordinates. Space itself seemed to fold inward, creating distortions that defied the Alliance's understanding of physics. Then, without warning, 3 vessels appeared. They were unlike anything in recorded galactic design philosophy. Where Alliance ships favored symmetry and elegant curves, these human vessels were angular, asymmetrical, and seemingly patchworked from disparate technologies. They bristled with structures that defied obvious categorization, neither weapons nor sensors by any recognizable standard. They're scanning us, reported the sensor officer, confusion evident in her voice. But I don't understand how. There's no detectable scan energy, yet our systems are being accessed at quantum levels. A new communication arrived, this time with visual. The being on screen was clearly human, matching the ancient archives but with subtle differences. Commander Chen had dark hair pulled back severely, skin with a golden undertone, and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything with uncomfortable intensity. "Admiral Vorn," she said without preamble, "I've reviewed your defensive positions. Inadequate. We need a direct confrontation with a Void Eater specimen immediately." Felix blinked all four eyes in succession. "Commander, with respect, direct confrontation has proven catastrophic. We've lost entire battle fleets trying to." "Yes, yes," Chen interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. "Your approach is logical but fundamentally flawed. We need to see how they respond to alternative stimuli." Alternative stimuli. The human's lips curved slightly upward in what the archives identified as a smile, though this expression contained no warmth. "You've been treating the Void Eaters as an enemy to defeat. We need to determine if they're actually a problem to solve." Within 3 hours, the human scout vessels had deployed to the edge of Void Eater territory. Alliance Command watched in horror as one human ship deliberately placed itself in the path of an advancing consumption front. "They're committing suicide," whispered Commander Zix. But instead of being consumed, the human vessel emitted a strange energy pattern that made the sensor technicians recoil from their stations in pain. The Void Eater mass hesitated. For the first time since their appearance, the consumption front paused. "Interesting," came Commander Chen's voice over the comms. "They're not mindless consumers. They're responding to stimulus, initiating test sequence Alpha through Gamma." For the next 12 hours, the humans performed what they called experiments, but which appeared to the Alliance observers as nothing short of madness. They subjected the Void Eaters to energy patterns that seemed random, exposed them to materials that should have been instantly consumed but weren't, and at one point appeared to deliberately allow a small portion of the Void Eaters to consume part of a human vessel. "What are they doing?" demanded General Kraz as they watched the inexplicable testing continue. Science Director Ilara's crystalline form pulsed with rapid calculations. "I believe they're communicating with it. Or trying to. Communicating. With a cosmic horror that consumes reality itself." Felix couldn't keep the incredulity from his voice. "The ancient archives did say humans viewed problems differently," murmured Archivist 10. 29 hours after their arrival, Commander Chen requested a direct meeting with the High Council. When she and 3 other humans materialized in the council chamber without using any detectable transport technology, even the most composed counselors couldn't hide their shock. "We've identified the nature of your Void Eaters," Chen announced without ceremony. "They're not a natural phenomenon or a weapon. They're a tool that's lost its controller." Humanity unleashed. The council chamber erupted in confused voices. High Counselor Oma Lux raised her luminous form to call for order before addressing the human delegation. "Commander Chen, please explain. You're suggesting the Void Eaters are artificial?" Chen nodded sharply. "Correct. They're nanoscale quantum processors designed to harvest energy for a civilization long gone. We'd found remnant command protocols embedded in their consumption patterns, mathematical signatures too precise to be random." Science Director Ilara's crystalline structure pulsed with rapid calculations. "But that's impossible. The energy requirements alone would be excessive by your understanding of physics," interrupted a human scientist beside Chen. Dr. Marcus Wong was shorter than the commander, but projected an intellectual intensity that made several counselors lean away instinctively. "Your civilization developed along a remarkably linear technological path. Efficient, but it created blind spots." Admiral Felix stepped forward. "If they're tools, can they be deactivated?" "Not deactivated," Chen replied. "Repurposed." The human delegation laid out their plan, and with each detail, the Alliance leadership oscillated between hope and horror. The humans proposed to introduce what they called a cascading quantum virus into the core of the largest Void Eater concentration. Not to destroy them, but to rewrite their fundamental programming. "You intend to hack a cosmic horror," General Kraz's mandibles clicked rapidly in what those familiar with Vexuri expressions recognized as hysterical laughter. Essentially, Chen confirmed without a hint of doubt. But we'll need two things. First, every available power source you can gather. We need to create an energy lure large enough to concentrate the Void Eaters. Second, your flagship as a delivery system. The Celestial Harmony. Felix couldn't hide his shock. Our last capital ship. It has the quantum resonance chambers we need, explained another human, Lieutenant Rivera, consulting a device on her wrist that somehow bypassed all Alliance encryption. With modifications, we can turn it into the perfect delivery system. High Counselor Lux's light dimmed thoughtfully. And if this fails, you would sacrifice our flagship on an untested theory. Commander Chen's expression remained unchanged. Your flagship will be destroyed in 19 days regardless. We're offering a chance, not a guarantee. After hours of tense debate, with reports of 2 more systems lost during their deliberations, the Council approved the human plan. What choice did they have? The next 3 days witnessed a flurry of activity unlike anything the Alliance had seen even during the height of the war. Human engineers swarmed through the Celestial Harmony, reconfiguring systems with technology that defied Alliance understanding. Alliance scientists who observed the humans noticed something unsettling. They appeared to be enjoying themselves. It's fascinating, Dr. Wong commented while recalibrating the flagship's quantum resonance chamber to specifications that the Alliance engineers insisted were impossible. We haven't encountered a challenge quite like this in centuries. Most problems are variations on familiar themes, but this, he grinned, this is actually new. You find our impending extinction intellectually stimulating? Asked Science Director Ilara, her crystals pulsing with confusion. Wong looked up from his work, seeming genuinely surprised by the question. Of course, the most significant breakthroughs in human history came from existential threats. Necessity drives innovation. He paused, studying Ilara's reaction. Your species doesn't experience this. The thrill of the impossible problem. Before she could answer, Commander Chen interrupted. We're ready for Phase 1. All non-essential personnel need to evacuate now. As the plan unfolded, the remaining Alliance fleet deployed in a pattern that contradicted all military doctrine. They weren't forming defensive positions, but instead creating what the humans called a temptation lattice, designed to attract the Void Eaters toward a specific convergence point. Admiral Felix, now serving aboard a secondary command vessel with the remaining High Council members, watched with a mixture of hope and dread as the Celestial Harmony, now heavily modified with human technology, moved into position at the center of the formation. The Void Eaters are responding, reported Commander Zix, monitoring sensor data. Consumption patterns are changing. They're accelerating toward our formation. As expected, Chen's voice came through clearly. They can sense the energy configuration we've created. Phase 2 initiating. The Celestial Harmony began emitting energy signatures unlike anything the Alliance had ever recorded, patterns that seemed to vibrate through reality itself, creating visual distortions even on the sensor displays. What exactly are you doing? Felix asked, unable to interpret the readings. Speaking their language, Chen replied. Every system has an input method. We